Welcome to the podcast, Stories from the World of Science. Our mission is to explain science in a simple and fun form that is open to all.
Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What fascinating corner of history are we exploring today?
Well, get ready to unravel some pretty complex theorems, because today we're diving into the world of mathematics.
Sounds intriguing, though I have to admit math isn't exactly my forte.
Don't worry, we're not just crunching numbers today. We're actually taking a closer look at the life of a remarkable individual, Josip Plemelj, a Slovenian mathematician who, let's just say, didn't shy away from a challenge.
Okay, now that sounds more up my alley. A mathematician who wasn't just about equations. Tell me more.
What's captivating about Plemelj is how his story intertwines with not just, mathematical breakthroughs, but with the birth of a nation and the development of its own mathematical spirit. It's a good reminder that math, at its core, isn't some isolated pursuit. It's influenced by the world around it, by the people who shape it.
I like that. It adds a human element to something I usually think of as, purely analytical. So where are we getting all this insight into Plemelj's life?
We're drawing from an article on Kadabra, that website. They do a fantastic job of making science accessible to everyone.
I've come across them before. Very engaging stuff.
Right. And this isn't just a dry recounting of equations or anything like that. We're talking motivations, challenges, the choices that shape not only Plemelj's career, but ultimately the future of Slovenian mathematics. Talk about leaving your mark on the world.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder that scientific progress, or any kind of progress, really isn't just about those aha moments. It's about the individuals who dedicated their lives to these pursuits, overcoming hurdles we can barely imagine.
Imagine, if you will, being a math whiz in 1873 in a village that's, now part of Bled, Slovenia.
Okay, painting a picture here. A math whiz in 1873. Go on.
Born into a poor family, loses his father when he's just 1 year old. And yet, even then, this incredible mathematical mind, it's already starting to shine through.
Now, that's what I call an underdog story. Overcoming adversity through, sheer talent and determination. It's inspiring, really.
It really is. The article mentions how he mastered high school math while he was still in middle school. He even independently developed Taylor series formulas.
Whoa, hold on. Independently? That's not just talent. That's a level of intuitive understanding you don't see every day. That's incredible.
And here's where things get even more interesting. Brilliance aside, life wasn't exactly handing out any participation trophies.
Yeah.
He supported himself through high school by tutoring his classmates in math. Can you imagine being tutored by the kid who's already mastered the textbook and then some?
I mean, talk about being humbled. But seriously, that speaks volumes about his drive, his resourcefulness. He clearly wasn't afraid of hard work, of taking initiative.
Though if what I've read is right, it seems he did have a bit of a mischievous streak. Got himself into a little trouble here and there, typical kid stuff.
Well, it's good to be reminded that behind every genius is a human being just trying to find their way, right?
Exactly. A brilliant mind, but still human. And it makes you appreciate those insightful teachers who are able to see past the mischief and recognize his potential. They played a pivotal role.
Oh, absolutely. Those early mentors, they can make or break you, especially when you have that much raw talent just waiting to be nurtured. They really paved the way for him to attend the University of Vienna, which, let me tell you, was a major turning point in his journey.
Vienna, in the late 1800s, it was a hub of intellectual thought. This wasn't just any university. For Plemelj, it was a chance to truly blossom.
I can only imagine. Surrounded by like-minded individuals, having access to the best resources, the most stimulating discussions, it must have been exhilarating.
The article mentions how he dove headfirst into not just math, but also physics and astronomy. It's like his thirst for knowledge knew no bounds.
He probably thrived in that environment. And to think, he was rubbing shoulders with some of the greatest minds of the era. The article mentioned a Professor Gustav von Escherich, who became a lifelong supporter of Plemelj's work.
Ah, yes, Professor Escherich. A testament to the power of mentorship, wouldn't you say? When you have someone who not only recognizes your potential, but actively champions your work, it can make all the difference.
It's like finding a shortcut through a mathematical maze. Having someone there to guide you, to open doors that might have otherwise remained closed. And speaking of opening doors, his career really takes off after Vienna. He completes his doctoral studies in differential equations, lands a prestigious fellowship in Berlin and Göttingen. Imagine working alongside the likes of David Hilbert, and then secures a strategic position at the court library in Vienna. quite a resume.
Impressive, to say the least. Though the article does sort of hint that this position at the library, while prestigious, maybe wasn't quite intellectually stimulating enough for him, like he was destined for something bigger.
I see, like the calm before the storm, perhaps, primed for something more.
Exactly. And in 1907, that something bigger presented itself. He's appointed a professor at Chernovitz in what's now modern-day Ukraine.
A well-deserved promotion. Though, knowing the political climate of that time and place, it does make you wonder, was it as straightforward as it seemed?
That's the thing about history, right? There are always layers to uncover. And in this case, the article suggests that while this appointment was undoubtedly a recognition of Plemelj's talent, it also highlights a rather unfortunate reality of the time.
Go on.
The Austro-Hungarian Empire, while a melting pot of cultures, also had its fair share of, well, let's call them limitations, particularly when it came to opportunities for non-Germans. It makes you think about all the untapped potential out there, the minds that were overlooked simply because of ethnicity or background.
A sobering thought, for sure. It's a reminder that talent doesn't always bloom in the most welcoming of environments. But it seems like Plemelj wasn't one to be held back by such barriers. He clearly had a knack for making the most of every opportunity.
He did. And here's something else that might surprise you. Plemelj was more than just a mind immersed in equations. He was a multifaceted individual. In 1910, he actually made headlines, not for a groundbreaking theorem, but for something completely different.
Intrigued. What could possibly upstage a groundbreaking theorem?
His astute observation of an unusual meteor. He challenged the existing theories of the time, showcasing his keen eye for detail and his willingness to, well, think outside the box.
A nice reminder that intellectual curiosity doesn't have to be confined to just one area of expertise. It's like finding out Einstein relaxed by composing symphonies. It adds a whole other layer to his story.
It does. And it was probably this insatiable curiosity that fueled his mathematical genius in the first place, don't you think?
Yeah.
That constant desire to understand the world around him, to unravel its mysteries.
Absolutely, because at its core, that's what science is all about, right? Curiosity, observation, and the drive to connect the seemingly unconnected. And in Plemelj's case, this curiosity would soon intersect with global events that would reshape not only his world, but the world as we know it. Talk about a turning point. World War I, it wasn't just some event on a timeline for Plemelj. It was deeply personal. Remember the Austro-Hungarian Empire? Yeah. The one that seemed to be holding him back with its limited opportunities?
Right.
Well, it turns out he was deeply frustrated with the empire. The article even says he thought about leaving academia to go into politics.
Wow, hold on. Leaving his career to dive headfirst into that political climate during a war. That's intense. What was he thinking?
It really shows you the atmosphere back then, right? How unstable things were. And you're right, the timing, well, it wasn't exactly on his side. He was outspoken, the article says, and that put him right in the spotlight.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he was labeled as politically suspect, and during a war, that wasn't something you wanted to be.
Definitely not. It makes you think about all those intellectuals facing those same struggles during such uncertain times, right? To be questioned just for speaking your mind, we're talking about more than math equations here. This is about resilience. But things really take a turn after the war. The empire crumbles. And what does Plemelj do?
What does he do?
He basically jumps right into building the future. He becomes a key player in establishing the University of Ljubljana. And get this, he becomes its first rector.
You're kidding. That's huge. I mean, think about it. This wasn't just about creating a university out of thin air. It was about laying the foundation for a whole new national identity for Slovenia. They'd been under the thumb of the Austro-Hungarian Empire for decades, their culture, their language suppressed. So yeah, founding this university, it was a powerful statement, a reclaiming of their heritage.
It makes you wonder, was this less of a job for Plemelj and more of a calling? Like he was pouring his experience, his knowledge, everything into building something for his nation. And the article does mention later on he knew this decision. It probably affected how much he could focus on his own research.
The classic dilemma, right? Personal ambition versus serving a bigger cause. He wasn't just building a university, though. He taught there for decades, helped shape what students were learning, even went as far as to develop Slovenian mathematical terminology.
He was practically writing the dictionary for future mathematicians, making it possible for them to learn in their own language. That's incredible.
It really shows the power of language, especially in scientific fields. Translating those concepts, making them relatable, well, that's nation building at its finest.
We've talked about Plemelj, the child prodigy, Plemelj, the wartime dissident, Plemelj, the university architect. But what was he like in the classroom? What was it like to be one of his students?
From what I gathered, his classes, well, they weren't exactly a walk in the park. He was known to be demanding, strict about time, expected his students to be able to keep up. No hand-holding here.
Okay, now you have to give me the details. What kind of professor doesn't allow note-taking in class?
Well, picture this. No notes allowed during lectures. He'd start and end on the dot, no exceptions. He firmly believed in recognizing potential from the get-go.
It makes you wonder if, beneath that stern exterior, there wasn't a spark of, encouragement for those who proved themselves. After all, he'd had those mentors who saw his potential early on.
You make a good point, and the article does hint at that. He might not have had much patience if you were struggling, but he was great at spotting real talent, nurturing it.
Like with his protege, what was his name?
Ivan Vidyav.
Vidyav, right. The article mentioned him, said he was a big part of Plemelj's legacy.
Oh, absolutely. Vidyav went on to do some amazing work in mathematics, and it's clear that Plemelj's guidance played a key role. He could be tough, but he wanted to see his students excel.
It's like that saying, right? Iron sharpens iron. Sometimes you need a little pressure to achieve great things.
Exactly. Though even with all his accomplishments, it sounds like Plemelj wasn't one to rest on his laurels. He achieved incredible things, but the article mentions he still felt like he could have done more.
It's almost a relatable feeling, isn't it? Even when you've achieved great things, there's always that little voice wondering, what if? Speaking of great things, we can't forget about his work, especially on that Riemann-Hilbert problem. It still resonates today in the math world.
Definitely. It's a fascinating problem, really. It's about finding these functions that fit certain conditions, but it's like navigating a maze of equations. Plemelj, he provided crucial insights, really moved the needle, and his work is still shaping research in math and physics.
So we're talking about more than just theoretical equations here. What kind of real-world stuff does this impact?
You wouldn't believe it. We're talking predicting how waves move in fluids, even understanding how those tiny quantum particles behave. It all goes back to those fundamental mathematical principles.
It shows how interconnected everything is. Even the most abstract math can ripple out and affect our understanding of the universe.
Absolutely. It all comes back to that thirst for knowledge, that drive to push boundaries.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the life of Josip Plemelj, we see a life of brilliance, perseverance, and a passion for knowledge and his country. He wasn't just a mathematician, but a builder, a mentor, someone who truly embodied the power of curiosity.
He reminds us that math, it's more than formulas and equations. It's a language, a tool to help us understand the world, a reflection of the brilliant minds trying to unlock its secrets.
Well said. We've journeyed from his humble beginnings to the heights of academia, encountered hurdles and triumphs, and explored the lasting legacy of a man dedicated to his craft and his nation. So as you go about your day, remember the power of knowledge, and that even amidst chaos, aiming to make the world a little brighter can lead to amazing change. Until next time, keep exploring, keep those minds curious.
You just listened to the podcast, Stories from the World of Science, written by Sasho Dolines.